This is CBC Vancouver News.
But in the metro, in the SkyTrain, there has to be some kind of, security there.
Transit fears calls for more security measures after another violent incident on a Surrey SkyTrain.
I'm glad I got to see the end of this because I never ever thought I was going to.
Historic settlement 100 years in the making. 5 First Nations are compensated by BC and Ottawa for land owed.
And we are celebrating Vaisakhi, we are celebrating birth of Khalsa, we are celebrating Canada.
Celebrating the return of the Vaisakhi parade. Thousands join Vancouver's Sikh community for the annual tradition. Good evening, I'm Lien Yeung. Thanks for joining us. There has been yet another stabbing on public transit, the third incident in Surrey in 2 weeks. A young man in his 20s was sent to hospital with wounds to his abdomen. He has since been released from hospital. The recent violence has some passengers on high alert. But as Janella Hamilton reports, overall crime on transit is declining.
So I'm really scared about walking alone in night.
For many, like this young woman, taking public transit is the only option to get to work and school. But these days, some are feeling a little more hesitant to hop aboard a SkyTrain or bus following a series of violent attacks on public transit.
Sometimes it's very scary and fearful. So just go your eyes down and be silent in the train or in the bus.
Metro Vancouver Transit Police say since 2016, overall reported crimes are declining. And there are about the same number of violent crimes this year as there was last year. However, there has been an increase in the use of edged weapons like knives. Last year, there was one incident from January to April. So far this year, there have already been 7.
It is very, very important that people take it seriously and be aware of their surroundings.
Police say shortly after 1 o'clock Saturday morning, a man on a train at Surrey Central Station was transported to hospital with a stab wound to his abdomen. It comes just days after 17-year-old Ethan Bestflug was stabbed and killed on a bus near King George Station. And on April 1st, another man had his throat slashed in what RCMP alleged was an act of terrorism. Transit police say the suspect has been committed to hospital for a psychiatric assessment. The issue is much bigger than just Surrey, says its mayor.
When I talk to mayors right across this country, mental health and addictions is one of the #1 things that we are all sharing in concern. And for us, in the South Fraser, we are disproportionately not getting the resources into this area.
Mayor Locke says transit police and RCMP are working together to step up patrols at transit hubs like here at Surrey Central SkyTrain Station. Public transit users we spoke to say more transit police and security are needed on board buses and the SkyTrain.
On the SkyTrain buses, on the SkyTrains, there has to be a little bit more police.
It will be helpful if they are in the transit and as well in the bus and always in the metro stations.
In a statement, TransLink says transit police have increased their presence and specialty teams have been redeployed to frontline patrols. Locke says she is working with officers to come up with long-term solutions to protect riders. Janella Hamilton, CBC News, Surrey.
Abbotsford police are revealing more about a violent home invasion that happened last week. Police were called to a home on the 1500 block of Bowman Road on Monday. A group of suspects broke into a home, displayed a firearm, and assaulted 2 people inside. Officers say the home is an active marijuana grow operation, but the 2 people at the home were not associated with the operation, but rather the farm that operates on the property. They are okay, but shaken. So far, no arrests have been made. 5 First Nations celebrated a historic land settlement with the province and federal governments today. They will receive compensation for land owed under Treaty 8.
It's been a long road for my people. 8 terms of chief and council, 25 years.
Everyone suffers, Indigenous and non-Indigenous. But these historic announcements bring us together. They bring us further down the path of reconciliation with the government. They help us set aside bigotry and racism, and they allow us to work together to build a stronger, fairer, and more prosperous Canada.
The Tealy settlement signifies the strength of our treaty, but it also gives us the hope that other processes will be a lot sooner than later.
This isn't a windfall. It's not free money. It's a bill that's gone unpaid for over 100 years by the Government of Canada. So there's any stigma and prejudice to be leveled on anyone, it's on the Government of Canada and not on our treaty partners whose obligations we've disrespected for 100 years.
The Saulteaux, Halfway River, Dorg River, Blueberry River, and West Moberly First Nations will receive $800 million in compensation from Ottawa. BC will also make 443 square kilometres of land available to the Five Nations. Under Treaty 8, signed in 1899, the government had agreed to provide at least 128 acres of land per person per nation, but failed to live up to those terms. This week, BC marks its 7th anniversary of the toxic drug crisis, and a celebration of life was held in Cranbrook yesterday to honour the thousands of lives lost to overdoses. The event was held by the East Kootenay Network of People Who Use Drugs and 3 other groups, including the Ktunaxa First Nation. This comes as Interior Health issued a region-wide drug alert on Thursday. The health authority noted multiple fatal overdoses from a toxic supply of cocaine mixed with fentanyl.
This drug poisoning crisis isn't just about the person who uses substances, it's about the family members, it's about, the people who are working in community to try and make a difference in somebody's life.
BC was the first jurisdiction in Canada to declare a public health emergency over increasing overdoses back in April of 2016. Last year, the toxic drug supply claimed over 2,000 lives here in the province. Vancouver saw one of its most popular cultural events return. The iconic Vaisakhi parade was back after a 3-year hiatus. CBC's Saurabh Sandhu was there to capture the excitement.
Colorful clothing, delicious food, loud music and huge crowds. The Vaisakhi parade is back. From children to seniors, people filled Vancouver's Punjabi market to celebrate.
After 3 years, our people are missing every year, so we expect a large crowd.
The iconic event was called off for the last 3 years because of the pandemic and health restrictions.
It's really exciting to have cultural events again in the city. It's been, 3 years now since.
The religious procession started from Khalsa Diwan Society Sikh Temple on Saturday morning, and various community leaders were present for the occasion.
It's a good reminder for all of us that the community can get together, celebrate in this way, recognize our differences, and be proud to be Canadians and British Columbians.
It's a culture of giving and kindness, and it really shows. And our society is way better for it.
Despite the rainy weather, the crowds grew to the thousands. Free food and snacks were handed out by neighbors and businesses as a part of community service known as Seva in Sikhism. For many, it was a chance to connect with their roots again.
It feels good to listen to the music and the crowds and smells because it brings you back to your own sense of home, even though you've never lived there.
This is a celebration and also giving back to the community. So it's a very special day for us.
We like to celebrate, we like to cherish, we like to contribute. And social integration, going through meeting people, hugging people, talking about each other's health, talking about each other's achievements, failures. This is what collective consciousness is.
And for some other first-timers, it was a moment of revelation.
It's amazing to see everybody coming together and being who they are and people just respecting each other. It's fantastic, celebration of a culture. It's amazing.
The Vaisakhi parade in Surrey is next weekend, one of the largest Vaisakhi celebrations in the world. Saurabh Sandhu, CBC News, Vancouver.
Well, another milestone has been reached for the Broadway subway construction. A tunnel boring machine has drilled its way from Mount Pleasant to Broadway City Hall station yesterday. There she goes. The machine, named Elsie after BC-born aircraft designer Elizabeth McGill, arrived at Mount Pleasant Station in late January. It began tunneling towards Broadway City Hall station last Tuesday. That station is the deepest being constructed at 20 meters underground. The project is meant to relieve congestion along the busy Broadway corridor. Once in service, a trip is expected to take 11 minutes from VCC Clark to Arbutus. Well, some bad news for fans of BC wines. The industry is anticipating a loss of half its wine grapes this year. An extended cold snap is to blame. Wine Growers BC says vine buds were killed off when temperatures dropped late December to -20 for about 2 days. As a result, they are forecasting a 39 to 56% drop in wine and grape production this year. The group says yields in general have dropped due to extreme weather from climate change. Students in a Kootenay community got the chance to share their entrepreneurial skills today. Kids from kindergarten to grade 9 worked for the past few months to come up with a business idea, and then they had to execute it at a school market. It's a career education project, but as Corey Bullock tells us, the kids had a bit of fun too.
Dressed in a suit and tie, Ramy Huscroft is ready to make a sale. He and his brother Sylvan take their popcorn business seriously.
This is basically our strategy. We'll earn money and then we'll use some of it to pay for some things we want.
Ramy was able to fund the purchase of a painting with revenue from his popcorn sales.
We're also learning how to successfully run a business and about customer satisfaction.
The HomeLink School in Creston is part of School District 8. Students create individualized learning plans with their parents and teachers. It's a blended learning experience, and now students are gaining entrepreneurial skills too.
And this gives them a hands-on chance to actually experience it, work with real floats, so it's not just talking about it or pretending to do it, they are actually doing it, from the process of planning what they're going to sell all the way down to selling it and figuring out what their profit is, if they make a profit, if they made a loss, and talking about why that happened.
It's the second time the school has hosted a student-run market, and teachers say it helps with confidence and creativity.
Kindergarten to grade 9 students spend several months preparing a product, developing a business plan, and their price list, and whatever else they need to get ready for their market, and they're in charge of the table and interacting with the customers. So it's a project-based learning experience for them.
Students bring their unique skills and talents to the table.
My name's Liberty Santano. I'm in grade 6 and I am doing art. I've always loved art, and I usually sit down at my desk in my room and just start painting or drawing or sketching, whatever.
I'm Kingsley Howard and I'm in grade 2.
Thanks, Kingsley. And what are you selling here today at the market?
Pizza with orange on it.
Pizza with orange on it? That sounds interesting. What made you decide to put orange on pizza?
Because it tastes good.
And some are just happy to be there.
I get to know more people and I'm super social, so I kind of like it.
By the time the market wound down for the day, many students were sold out. And some even plan to continue their business once school breaks for the summer. Corey Bullock, CBC News, Creston.
If you can put pineapple on pizza, you can put orange on pizza. All right. The Lower Mainland is losing another unique restaurant. When it opened in 2018 on Fraser Street in Vancouver, Ubuntu Canteen's aim was to focus on building community as it served delicious food. But just over 4 years later, the restaurant will serve its last meal tomorrow. Its owner says he is ready to focus on family and personal life. We spoke with their staff as they prepared for the end.
I think what Ubuntu represents is like this example of what businesses could be. I think in my mind, without being a martyr to the system.
The actual building itself is just welcoming. The way it was designed, and the wood and the lights and the plants. It was meant to be more of like a community space.
The vibe and just the philosophy that Dave has in terms of food and restaurant tourism and creating a community was just something that really naturally drew me to it.
I think, and it stems back to like the name Ubuntu and Dave's philosophy behind that, and like that everyone is seen and it's a community, and it's not really just like the one person, like the patriarchal chef, reigning over everyone. It's more that everyone has thoughts and ideas, and that matters.
Everyone on the team here is just amazing. Like, it's one of the things that I'm going to miss most.
We just care about each other. Yeah, and you can tell that by the interactions, and that's the type of people that tend to work here.
You want to create a place where people can truly be themselves. I think part of it is also like, there's a sunset clause here, right? We came, we showed, and then we disappeared because our job is done. We need to be willing to relinquish ourselves when our time is no longer valuable or our purpose is no longer relevant, right? I mean, like all things, like eventually, you know, any kind of organization has to disappear when their job is done.
Water conflict is feared as Sudan's military and a powerful paramilitary force are engaged in fierce fighting, leaving dozens dead. That story is next. Stay with us. Deadly violence has erupted in Sudan. A paramilitary group is fighting against the army, and civilians are getting caught in the crossfire. Doctors say at least 25 people have been killed. The CBC's Ithel Musa reports on today's revolt and what led up to it.
The sounds of gunshots and explosions echo through Sudan's capital as fighting erupts between two armed factions.
وفي الإذاعة السودانية الآن
The violence Saturday even interrupted this state TV broadcast. We hear gunshots and explosions, says the presenter, in a studio near Khartoum. Sudan's Rapid Support Forces, or RSF, says it's taken control of key sites in the country. But the head of Sudan's army denies the paramilitary's claim. A power struggle has been brewing between the two sides. The RSF was initially established by the Sudanese government during the conflict in Darfur in the early 2000s.
They're the successor group to what was known as the Janjaweed militia, who were responsible for egregious human rights abuses in the western Sudanese province of Darfur.
Getting the RSF and Sudan's military to reach an agreement is critical. Their merger is a key condition of a new deal with civilian leaders. But there are disagreements about how and when the two forces should be integrated.
Ultimately, it comes down to power and control and who is going to be the entity to rule Sudan.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken says there's still hope for a civilian-led government in Sudan and a transition to democracy.
I think there's a real opportunity to move forward on the agreed framework, and certainly that's what we're strongly supporting. It's a fragile situation.
The African Union and leading Arab states are also pushing for an end to the fighting and for talks aimed at restoring a civilian government to resume. Idil Musa, CBC News, Toronto.
Marches are happening across the U.S. this weekend in support of abortion rights. The rallies come amid a slew of challenges to and restrictions on safe abortion access. As CBC's Chris Reyes reports, organizers say this is a make-or-break moment for women's rights.
Are we going to back down?
This rally on the steps of the U.S. Supreme Court, just one of dozens happening across the country, organized by Planned Parenthood and Women's March.
Extreme anti-abortion judges are attempting to steal our bodily autonomy.
Last week, a Texas court ruling suspended the FDA's approval of mifepristone, a popular abortion pill that's been on the market for more than 20 years.
We are breaking the glass. We are saying that we cannot ignore the way that our judiciary has been compromised. We cannot ignore the impact of that on our democracy. We cannot ignore the overreach into our federally mandated processes like FDA approval.
On Friday, the Supreme Court temporarily blocked that restriction following a request from the Biden administration.
I think it's outrageous what the court has done relative to concluding that they're going to overrule the FDA and whether it's going to be safe or not. I think it's out of their domain. But we'll see what happens. We'll see.
In Florida, Governor Ron DeSantis just signed a bill banning abortions after 6 weeks.
It just seems completely tone deaf, catering to a rabid base that really does not understand the realities of the implications of these decisions.
At the rally in D.C., activists shared their personal story of how safe abortion access saved their lives.
I'm able to be engaged in a loving relationship with my fiance. I have financial stability, and I'm able to enjoy my adulthood with my fiance, able to travel and just love one another. I would not have any of those things if it weren't for safe, legal access to abortion.
But it's truly a day that we pick a side. It's truly a day that every single moment that we possibly have the opportunity to fight for reproductive freedom, we take it.
The Supreme Court hold lifts next Wednesday. Chris Reyes, CBC News, New York.
French President Emmanuel Macron this morning signed his controversial pension reforms into law, and the rest of the day witnessed protests. There were street fires and police tear gas, the latest unrest amid ongoing mass demonstrations. The reforms increase the number of working years needed for the national pension. Macron has invited union leaders for talks. They declined, vowed to keep fighting, along with a day of protest on May 1st. Japan's Prime Minister Fumio Kishida escaped unhurt today after what appeared to be a smoke bomb that was thrown at him. A suspect was quickly overpowered even as the blast went off. It happened at an election campaign event. No injuries were reported. It comes less than a year after the assassination of former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. It's the end of the road for the Vancouver Canucks, eliminated from the playoff race. What's next for our home team? We'll hear from some of its star players next. Another Canucks season has come to an end. Vancouver missing the playoffs for the 7th time in 8 seasons, despite big performances from some of the team's stars.
I'm super happy the way I've been taking steps this year and obviously scoring a lot of points, but super happy the way I've been growing as a player.
I think going into the year, everyone thought that we would, there's a chance we'd be in the playoffs, or that's what we were definitely striving for. So definitely a little disappointing.
Pettersson reached a career-high of 102 points with 39 goals and 63 assists across 80 games, while Hughes broke his own record for points in a season by a Canuck defenseman with 69 assists and 7 goals in 78 games. Pettersson and Hughes say they remain confident the Canucks are heading in the right direction under new coach Rick Tocchet. The Canucks finished the season with a 38-37-7 record. So they didn't play so well. There's always next season. All right, that's it for us this Saturday night. Thank you so much for watching. I'll be back here tomorrow. Have a good one.